what those are. And then in item number 5, we do have in our work program this idea of process subcommittees, that we want to have some folks within this committee as well as outside this committee that will help us put together a process that will attract as many people as possible to it. I'd like you well, we've used the word community-driven a number of times. I'd like you to think about what happens when you throw a pebble in a pond. I'd like for you to be thinking about, you guys are the pebble, you're that first ring. But from this day forward until we complete this plan, we want the influence and the input to reach out back into your networks and back into your neighborhoods. And that you will take your responsibility as being the custodians of those ideas, concerns, and issues very seriously when we begin the deliberations. We have not made a commitment about the meeting location next time, but it is my intention that we are able to be in a room that's less of a classroom and more like a workroom. I want you to be able to see each other as we work and discuss what we're doing. So we'll work on that. That's a small problem. We're glad to have this many people here in the meeting with us. So after we talk about the subcommittees, I am going to ask you to do a little bit of brainstorming with us tonight. We very quickly want you to be able to talk about this. We want the management team to be able to talk about what this process is about. And so we're very important about the messages associated with it. What is this? And what do you need to be saying to your colleagues at work or someone at church to let them know what's really going on here and what's at stake and how they can get involved? So I want a little bit of your help tonight about what are these key messages. We would like to talk a little bit, or at least get some initial input from you about what you see are some of the fundamental issues that this effort, this plan has to address for you to consider a success. What are those priority issues that this strategic action plan has got to address? We then will wrap up with talking about the next meeting and with any questions you might have. There will be members of the management team that are around later, and I'll be around later after the meeting if there are some additional questions. But that is our program for this evening. So with that, let's see. I'm going to talk about these items on the agenda. I'm going to slip over and get my water here. You probably will appreciate that. These 3 items are what I want to give you an overview about. Really talk about, from a philosophical standpoint, what it is we're trying to do. We've worked with the management team to try to define a work program that fits Muncie, but there's an underlying philosophy that I think is important. And we'll talk about the actual work program itself and then the timeline. First of all, really though, is understanding the objectives. There are 6 of them here that are really important to what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And the first is to establish a renewed vision. And for us, this vision is really the aspirational aspect of what you're doing. And the actions are really how we're going to do it. The management team has been very clear with us from the very beginning that this is not an effort that ends with a plan and a document. That'll really be the beginning of something is when this plan is done. That action and implementation are the priority. In doing this process, one of the critical objectives is that there are ample opportunities that for anybody who cares about the future of this community, that they have the opportunity to contribute to shaping the future. And that will be the measure of success, for us, is if we cannot find anybody in Muncie who knew that they had an opportunity to come. This process is going to be organized primarily based on face-to-face work. There will be opportunities to contribute ideas using the internet, but we think there's great value in actually having people face-to-face working on this kind of an effort. And so we're trying to facilitate as many of these opportunities as we can, but in the end, it's still going to be a self-selected sample of people who come to these meetings. our intentions are to have a sample that's large enough that you're confident in making good, solid recommendations about how to move forward. We want to, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to do this in a way with you that integrates what people tell us, what they know just by their intuition, with technical research. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the work program. Muncie, as we saw just in our brief tour around today, has a great deal of assets. How do we take advantage of those and connect those in some sort of logical framework? That is an objective. The fifth one here is to really put together a plan that is integrated, that all the systems, whether it's the economic system or the natural systems or the social issues, that are all connected in a logical framework that is enduring, that it has a life, once this process is completed. And finally, if we do this well, it becomes an active, useful tool to help in decision making. And it actually gets institutionalized, not just in city government, but in the way that maybe many of you conduct business here in this community, is that you're all on a similar sort of agenda for the future. So we start with a vision effort. And how many of you have been involved in your community or some other community in something you would call a vision effort? Great, it's quite a few hands. What I'm going to ask you to do is, hopefully those have been good experiences for you, but I'm trying to define in this process what we mean by a vision. We talk about this. We're talking about, in this case, a citizen-driven strategic effort. It's a process that's neither top-down nor bottom-up. There are a number of visions that we're familiar with where it's really been a leadership group, well-intentioned, well-informed, but at the end of the day, not really having a broader level of ownership that's going to happen. We're also familiar with very well-intentioned grassroots visioning efforts that never have traction with the leadership in the community. So for us, the vision is really about connecting all the way from the highest levels of leadership down to the small group. And this notion that I mentioned earlier about, you've been identified and you've agreed to help be the core of this process. But it's clearly our intention to do this and do this well, that we've got to enlarge the sphere of people who are contributing to this process. And that is what we're really going to be focused on in the next couple of months, is really increasing the sphere of participation. So for us, community-based, citizens and leaders working on a common agenda that encompasses all aspects of community life. Marta had mentioned that she and her organization are responsible for what the state calls a comprehensive plan. And what you're doing is going to feed into that. It has specific topics that must be addressed by the state. This strategic plan will have some, no doubt, overlapping themes from that. But we have not, as a consultant or as the management team, has not defined what these topics are going to be. They're going to be coming from the process. But we'll organize the vision in the structure, which is made up of a series of goals that are our aspirations, that has our values identified clearly in terms of principles, that has identified clear programs, policies, and projects to achieve our goals, with specific task assignments on what's going to be done, who's going to do it, and how will we know that it's been done. So at the end, the agenda you put together will have this sort of basic structure to it. And in the end, for us, it's really about trying to connect the issues of people, place, and prosperity. For those of you who are involved in the issues of sustainability, those probably sound familiar to you in terms of the triple bottom line that people talk about. But for us, they've always been just sort of the fundamental aspects of what makes up the community and linking those issues together in a meaningful way. So in terms of our philosophy,